Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Talk Junkies, where tonight is going to be the most interesting night of all time. Maybe. We'll see. It's a possibility. But anyways, the reason I say that is because we have a guest on for the first time in 3 weeks. It's a very beloved guest here at Talk Junkies, one of the OG3 guests here on the show. But anyways, he's got a lot of important information to share tonight with Talk Junkies, and honestly, just the whole country, and specifically the state that we live in, Missouri, as well. A lot of things are in play right now, and a lot of things are in action. A lot of freedoms are up for grabs. There's no other better person to talk to about that than Pat from Truth, Money, Freedom. How you doing, my man?
Hey, I'm doing good. Hey, I need to know, how do I become OG1? You know, I'm an overachiever. I'm very competitive. I mean, you guys just throw me a bone here.
Well, you're a part of the OG3, like you, Mike Anderson, and then Dan Cox would be like our
gotcha.
OG3.
Okay, well, actually,
no
I'm in
specific
good company,
order.
So
yeah.
Well, thank you very much for having me back, and I've brought my my partner in crime here, Kaleb, who worked the SAPA legislation for the state of Missouri, Second Amendment Preservation Act. I figure probably the very best thing to do starting out this video, because a lot of your listeners may not know what happened with SAPA in the state of Missouri. So is it okay if we talk about that for a few minutes, what happened, where we're at, and then we can go on to the Missouri Liberty Alliance?
100%. Also, we got Johnny, Jesse in the house as well. Kaleb, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing all right, man.
Welcome to Talk Junkies, man. We look forward to have a nice chat with you, and very pleased to have you on, man.
Okay, so once again, thanks for having us back. To update all the viewers who are not familiar with the Second Amendment Preservation Act, Missouri did get that passed with teeth. So actually, honest to God, Missouri law enforcement, honest to God, does not recognize federal firearms laws anymore. We now are working on our own laws, and there was an emergency clause put in the bill to make it legal the instant it was signed by the governor. So we carried that live on the Truth, Money, and Freedom podcast. So where we're at right now is, number one, we have our own laws in the state of Missouri. Number two, Missouri law enforcement cannot enforce any federal gun laws whatsoever. If they do, they face a very, very stiff penalty, a fine, $50,000 per person per incident. And because of this, basically the federal government has been threatening to take away our funding, our federal funding for law enforcement in the state of Missouri, which was unconstitutional to begin with. So that's basically where we're at. Now, why we're different, why we're special right here, pardon me, in the state of Missouri, is we were the only state that actually got SAPA through with ramifications for law enforcement that follow federal laws. We have something that is so different that we're the template, we're the poster child for a bad state now as far as the federal government's concerned. We're bad boys. Why? Because we actually kept the teeth in our bill. How did that happen? That was grassroots support. Without the grassroots support, we never would have gotten this done. All the states wanted it. They couldn't get it. They didn't have enough grassroots support. So that's why, and by the way, I'll let Kaleb talk a little bit, but that's why we started the Missouri Liberty Alliance. So Kaleb, would you like to add any more about SAPA and getting it through?
Well, I was going to say it was interesting the day that it was kind of locked up on the Senate floor with a filibuster, and I actually had gotten a hold of Mike Bolden over there at 10th Amendment Center. I asked him what else can be done out this way to take care of that situation, and he said, "Oh, there's one thing. It's kind of a hostile maneuver, Senate Rule 84, which means to break the filibuster by force, effectively." I don't know whether they actually used it or not, but I'm pretty sure they threatened it, and it wasn't long after that the filibuster just broke, and it finally went to the floor for a vote.
Yeah, that was actually pretty amazing for a lot of different reasons, because there were so many stumbling blocks getting SAPA done, and to carry it on to the second to the last day of the legislative season, and then it literally to end up in a filibuster. You know, there was a lot that went into actually getting this done. And once again, for all of the grassroots out there that helped get it done, thank you so much. You have made us the freest of all 50 states for gun rights. There's no state that comes close to us anymore. We are number one in the nation for gun rights.
And that's huge. And I had you on for 25 minutes to kind of right whenever it passed initially before Parsons signed it. And I was kind of scared a little bit because of those things. You know, anything can happen within a grace period. And you had said maybe July 4th, but then it ended up being like the 26th or something like that, late June.
Yep.
Where he signed it in Lee Summit. And kudos to Parsons for signing the bill. I mean, it comes down to one person to make us the freest gun state in the United States, and he signed it, which is really cool. And that's where we're at. But my question to you on the phone earlier was, Pat, is why isn't it getting any national recognition? Again, you have people like Tim Pool, and We Are Change, and even Brian from High Impact. Like, I don't think he talked about it. You don't hear any of those people talking about Missouri making this huge move. Why is that?
Sorry, that's a great question. Before that, though, real quick, can we layman's terms for people what this actually means for the average like gun owner and stuff? Because I'm sure people don't know every federal law and every Missouri law, but just like a simple day-to-day example of what's actually changed for us.
Kaleb is our resident expert, so I'm going to defer to Kaleb on the difference between Missouri law and federal law. Go ahead, Kaleb.
Well, so quick note though, I actually did call in on High-Pack Flinks a few months ago, and I did it twice and pointed it out to him what's going on here. I probably need to call in again and see if I can't get him to say something on it. But as far as what laws apply here in Missouri, it depends on what is and is not defined in Missouri law. Like, for example, destructive devices and any other weapons are not defined under Missouri law. So in other words, you can go ahead and stick yourself a little a pistol grip on your rifle or on your pistol, or no, a foregrip on your pistol, and they can't say anything. As for destructive devices, Missouri law does define explosive weapon, but that's only if it's something that's going to be fragmenting and causing bodily harm and whatnot. But in terms of bores that are over 50 caliber in diameter that would have been previously destructive devices, doesn't apply. Anything that is of a large
gang.
Yeah, well, yeah, actually howitzers and stuff, those are no longer, as long as you don't put explosive projectiles in. Now, the funny thing is that if you have, for example, a depleted uranium penetrator, that is I know this is funny too, because it's not an explosive, it's a depleted uranium penetrator. It reacts with steel on contact. So you can technically have a depleted uranium penetrator in a howitzer in Missouri and no tax stamps.
Well, I'm not too worried about that. I just meant the in general, like, conceal and carry. Like, I knew we were constitutional carry and all that. I just didn't know how it changed for the average person. But we can go back to Paul's thing about like why this isn't brought up, like why this isn't like, because this is a big deal actually. A state like gaining its freedom in something.
Because first off, they don't want this freedom to spread. The last thing they're going to do is actually advertise what the state of Missouri has done. Basically, if we stay quiet and lay low, the federal government thinks if we don't bring attention to what Missouri did, then other states won't do the same thing. Other states tried to get SAPA. They all failed. Well, they got SAPA, but they got SAPA without ramifications, without consequence. So it's meaningless.
I was going to say that kind of defeats the point. That's like playing poker with no money.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
But what I'll answer in a slightly different way. Missouri will now make its own laws as far as guns are concerned. We will not be following federal law anymore. In fact, I suspect that noise suppressors will be legal in 2022. I just have a weird feeling that may happen.
Man, that's so crazy to think about, just because I've looked into that kind of stuff before. So does that mean our laws are separate then as well for stuff like short-barreled rifles and stuff like that? Like
actually, Missouri law does define short-barreled rifle, short-barrel shotgun, and is what's the word I'm looking for? The same. It's basically written exactly the same in federal as it is in the state law.
Okay.
So that still applies the same, but as soon I forget I think it's RSMO 571-20. And that defines what things are considered NFA items in Missouri. I guess you could call them that. They're not NFA anymore because that
but the same kind of principle.
But the only thing they have on there is machine guns. What is that? Suppressors and short-barreled rifles and short-barreled shotguns. They don't include any other weapon or destructive device in that. They have explosive weapon, like I was saying earlier, but effectively, it just says any of the following outside of federal law. So it's a gray zone. Technically, federal law doesn't apply here, but that law section wasn't taken out with SAPA. So it technically does.
Because it's still in the state law, kind of. I think the big part of it is just the fact that even if they were to keep a lot of the like legislature and writing like the same, it's still the fact that now it's coming directly from just our state and not on a federal level, which is a step in the right direction.
We can alter our laws in the state very easily compared to trying to get that done. And I'm sorry, Caleb.
I was gonna say all you have to do is those sections, you strike them out of law. You would write a bill that says from this date onward, and you'd word it more specifically than that, but this section of law, and then it cites the law, shall be struck out. And then it's literally how they do it in the actual the legislature is they'll take one line with one number and they'll say write out the law specifically in there, and then they'll put a strike through on it. And all that has to do is pass through the House and the Senate and be signed off on, and it's gone.
So, and then sorry, Pat, I remember when we had talked earlier, whenever SAPA was still in its progress, and you had said that I guess kind of what we're talking about right now is, as of January 1st of this year, we don't comply with federal gun regulations anymore. So any laws that were passed before January 1st, 2021, those are still in effect. And those are the...
No,
not anymore. Go ahead.
They are not. And the reason being is, and there are certain things that they put that date on there, but the law specifically says past, present, and future.
Okay.
So even ATF rulings regarding like bump stocks and things like that no longer apply.
Wow. Missouri's badass.
Now, I don't recommend going on YouTube and spraying your bump stock everywhere because the feds can see that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Now, what about just for like the average person going to buy a gun for the first time? Does that process change at all?
No, it doesn't. I'm sorry, Caleb, go ahead. You're the best to answer this one too.
If you're buying from an FFL dealer, it doesn't change because the FFL is the importer into the state. They are and if you're buying from them, they're federally licensed. They have to comply not under Missouri law, but because they have federal licenses, they can get in some deep shit. So they're in a stuck place. But manufacturing is different. There is no requirements for a manufacturer license in the state of Missouri or a sales license in the state of Missouri. So you can manufacture and sell whatever the hell you want, as long as you want in Missouri.
How many
Missouri residents?
How many gun manufacturers are in Missouri? Are there any?
There's CMMG. They are Central Missouri Machine Gun. There's Midwest Tactical down in Joplin. I think Smith & Wesson has a location here. There's several manufacturers here in Missouri.
I have a weird question, and it's hypothetical, but also at the same time going to seem like specific just because I'm trying to work my way around this process. So if I were to, purchase a firearm through an FFL that, like, let's say it was manufactured in Texas. It's manufactured in Texas, and then I'm buying it through an FFL here in Missouri. Can I then legally sell that firearm in Missouri to anybody that I want?
Yeah, technically, because
even if they couldn't buy one from an FFL.
Here. There's no laws for straw purchases in Missouri.
Gotcha.
Yep. So, and by the way, the ramifications are so broad on this, I don't even know where to start. But what it does mean is basically we make our own laws in the state of Missouri now. So that means, as Caleb had said before, it's time to get rid of some old laws that don't make sense anymore. It's time to get rid of tax stamps. Well, tax stamps are technically already gone. But if you, Johnny, want a noise suppressor and you go through all the hoops and all the red tape and all the tax stamps, you could still get one here in the state of Missouri through an FFL. So, this is the main problem, I think. We need something like a state version of that, so we
I
can
wouldn't
get
even
through
say that. I wouldn't even say that. That just needs to be struck out of the law here.
Well, yeah, but the FFL, this is the problem. The FFL is still, in large here in Missouri, and they're going to follow those federal laws no matter what. So how do we get the the noise suppressors into Missouri without the FFLs?
You have regular unlicensed manufacturers here in Missouri.
Well, if they manufacture here in Missouri, that is correct. That is the only correct answer, I think.
Realistically, I could see.
Because you don't want to be giving that power to the state government either.
No, you're right. You're right.
I was going to say, realistically, I could kind of see that happening long term as well. Give it 5 to 10 years or something like that, and I could see that happening. I mean, man, take a look at what happened with Colorado and weed. You know what I mean? Like, to where all of a sudden now it's grown there and all this different stuff. Like, maybe that's a weird analogy or metaphor or whatever you want to call it, but I could see companies literally springing up and being like, hey, Missouri is now the place to do this.
Yeah.
Like, Missouri is now the place where we should manufacture these. It makes the most sense. Even if we're shipping them somewhere else and doing it the federal way, there's still going to be more customers available in this state.
Yeah. And you can, and because they could set it up as two companies. One that is just a general, like a general store that they can put their under the ground suppressors over to. And then they have their FFL, which sends them off to other states.
I don't even want a suppressor. I just really want to get an SBR. I just want a short barrel rifle.
Yep.
Well, as it stands now in Missouri, you can turn around and get yourself a pistol brace on it. Pistol brace.
Yeah.
And then you can turn around and put yourself a foregrip on it, and it's any other weapon.
Yeah.
Which is not a Missouri thing anymore. And they don't care if you shoulder it.
Well, it's a lot of important stuff, man. I mean, it's all just very new to me. I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't do my due diligence and learn a lot of these laws in the first place. And Kaleb, you have a vast amount of knowledge on it, man. It's absolutely fantastic that people like you
exist. I keep the Missouri Revisor on standby. It's on tab in my browser.
Yeah. Well, Pat, I know you got some other. I don't know if there's anything more that you want to speak on the Second Amendment, but I know you got something very important that you want to share with all our viewers here on Talk Junkies, man. You got an important movement going on, man. So if you could kind of dive into that a little bit, again, if there's nothing else you guys want to talk about with the Second Amendment Preservation Act.
Yeah, I think we did a pretty good job of covering it, and it's important for people to know we did get it. We do have the teeth, and it's unique because no other state was able to get it done with teeth. We're it. And it's because of the grassroots. Well, thinking about that, one of our other cohorts, his name is Jim Wendell. We thought about it and we're like, how are we going to stop, legislation from coming through sneakily in the state of Missouri, snipping away at the edges of this new SAPA law that we have, letting the Fed back in, putting the camel's nose in the tent. So basically, that's when the Missouri Liberty Alliance was born. That's a brand new organization that we have just started. We're growing it right now. And this is a multi-purpose organization with huge impact, not only for the state of Missouri, but I think for other states that follow what we're going to do, because the broad, if I want to say the broad stroke of what this organization is all about is keeping Missouri constitutional. Because most of the legislation that goes through any state's legislature, or even federal for that matter, is not constitutional. There's something in there that actually takes away rights from the people. The Constitution, as you remember, Paul, is not for you and me. These are limits on the federal government. The Constitution is written for the government and to limit their powers. The Bill of Rights, that's for you and me. And what they're ignoring the Constitution, and they're taking away our rights at the same time with almost every bill that goes through any legislature. Mm-hmm. So this organization is primarily going to be protecting SAPA and making sure that none of the edges get snipped off with little pieces of legislation here and there over a period of time that can damage SAPA. Number two, hold all of our representatives, our senators, even our city mayors, our county, sheriffs, accountable by literally when they do something that is unconstitutional or say something that is unconstitutional, we will put them on notice on our website. We will literally put them in the oath breakers category. And then we'll visit with them and see if they want to get off the oath breakers list or if they don't care that people know that they're breaking their oath. So we're literally starting an organization that's it doesn't matter. We're not right, left. Just stay constitutional. We don't care what flag you want to fly. We don't care. As long as you stay constitutional, we'll have no problem with you. So that's, by the way, that is a small spectrum view. The larger aspect of it is difficult to even come across with a 1/2 hour speech about what we're going to do with this organization. But the important thing to know is the organization is more than me. Kaleb, who's here with us right now, is part of that organization. Jim Wendell, Conjecture, you guys know him as Brandon, also part of the organization. It's not just me. And then basically we're just the organizing principle for it. We're going to have memberships. We're going to literally assemble to a point where the state of Missouri has no choice but to work with us on whatever we want them to do that is constitutional. That is what we're going to do. The only thing that is like what we're doing is in New Hampshire. It's called the Free State Project. And that is, but ours is very different from theirs. But just to give you a quick glance and overview, the main purpose of it is to, number one, keep your state 100% constitutional. And by the way, that's not an easy task. That's a very difficult thing to do. But number two is, from our ranks, from our membership, we hope to populate the Missouri legislature from people that actually come from this organization, respect the Constitution, respect the Bill of Rights, respect the Missouri Constitution, and don't go in there to get their buddies, business, a whole bunch of business from the state of Missouri, because we see that all too often, the sweetheart deals. So that's kind of the broad strokes. Go ahead, Kaleb.
Oh, no, yeah, you're going over the. I was just. I guess.
Okay, sorry. I thought you were talking.
I think he was just going at the sweetheart deals.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So this is so new, so innovative, so different, so unique that I don't think the politicians and all the people who hold public office are going to truly understand the scope of it until probably summer of next year. They have no idea what. Basically guys, I want to give the actual numbers. I'm trying to say things without saying them because I can't show my hand on everything, but an organization of 2,000 people in a state is much, much more powerful than the average person thinks. Really, I'm not joking about that. An organization of just 2,000 active people that make phone calls and send emails and is very, very powerful. That's all it takes to get stuff done. That's all. That's all I think I could really say about that. But I think that's pretty accurate. So if you have 10,000 people in an organization, it's a hurricane. It's not just a force anymore. It's a hurricane. And just think about it for a second. If there's 20,000 people in that organization, you pretty much just take over the state. And if those 20,000 people care about the Constitution of the United States, if they care about the Bill of Rights, and they take over the state, your state's going to get something very special in return. Free markets. You can bring back the free markets state by state. I'm sorry, Kaleb, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say free markets, something that really doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's time for us to actually walk the walk, talk the talk, and actually pretend that the federal government doesn't exist, and clean up our own backyard before we start complaining about anyone else's backyard. It's time for us to return Missouri to 100% constitutionality in everything it does, everything it says, everything it promotes, and literally lead the country, literally from the state of Missouri, and show other states how to do it. We did it with SAPA. We can do it with gold and silver too. That's something we're going to work on legislative 2022. We're going to make gold and silver money again in the state of Missouri. And on top of that, we're going to have a state repository so the state can actually start saving in gold and silver. That's what we're going to do. So they can trade out bonds from the reserves.
Beautiful.
Yep.
That sounds impossible to me, by the way. That sounds so impossible to me.
But hold
what
on,
you're saying.
It is, and exactly.
In all truth, I'm like, man, you're stepping on so many toes.
For
doing
anyone,
that,
it's
man.
a wonderful
like,
thing to step on that many politicians' toes.
Like,
but it's
shit,
important for me to
man.
point out right now, I am not suicidal, and neither is Kaleb.
Yeah.
Neither of us are suicidal, by the way. Hang on.
That's
if
really
you guys
dark
read in the
and
Springfield
hilarious.
News Leader, if you read in the Springfield News Leader like a month from now or 2 months from now that I committed suicide by shooting myself in the back of the head with a shotgun twice, you'll know that there was foul play, right?
Yeah.
Pat, I'm very lucky to have met you, man. And again, thank you to Brian from High Impact for me to be able to find you is a very special thing to me, anyways. And if anyone who's watching this live stream right now is new to Talk Junkies, just go through our past podcasts and kind of check them out and all that stuff. Sorry, we got something happened. I don't know what that is.
We got upgraded, Paul.
Yeah,
a gift from Zoom. Fuck off, Zoom.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, you'll see. We've always been looking for answers, man. We're always looking for answers, and we're tired of all the corruption and the politics that are going on, man. And just this is something. This is just that ground. This is just the first step that we need. And you came up with it. You and this organization and your 4 partners or your people and your community with the Truth, Money, Freedom podcast and your Discord, not yours, but your guys' community. You guys are doing something about it, man. As opposed, I mean, we do a little bit. We talk about stuff on our podcast and trying.
I've never called my senator.
Yeah, I mean, but we're still trying.
John, not even during SAPA. Oh, John.
I've never. At least I'm honest with you.
Well, like almost how we grew up is, man, we don't have any, even through our votes or anything, like we can't really do anything. But what you're talking about is a union of people. It's not an individual. It's like getting 2,000 people together. And not to say directly what you were saying, it's about the mass getting together and being able to do something. But it gets dismal for a person who grows up and like, man, my vote really, like, what does my vote matter? Like, what do I actually have any say? And you have this overarching federal authority that gets to decide everything for me.
I think we as individuals feel like we don't matter as individuals in the large scheme of things. And what the ironic part about that is if a whole bunch of us if I actually did call my senator and do what I'm supposed to do and do these things, then I'm not an individual doing it. I'm part of a group of people who is all doing that, and it's for the betterment,
Yeah.
Well, let me float an interesting topic. And that's, basically, and I get credited a lot. Hey, Pat, you're the guy who not only talks about it on YouTube, you actually get it done, with SAPA and other things. But let me talk a little bit about, because most of my friends are anarchists, by the way. Weirdly enough, I mean, I'm not joking. I'm kind of a self-described libertarian because it's the easiest way to describe, the way I feel politically. But I'm not truly a libertarian either. But let me tell you a little bit about this gold and black thing going on here. We need each other. There's a reason why that's gold and black. I get it. But the anarchists need the libertarians, and the libertarians need the anarchists. And I'll tell you why. And we're talking about truly constitutional people. Anarchy is misunderstood. Anarchists are saying we have the Constitution, we have laws, but we don't need a big government. In fact, we really don't need government at all, because if we truly had a free market, problems within the free market take care of themselves. And that's actually true. And now we could go through the broad ramifications of that sweeping statement in another podcast because it's huge. But basically, where the nonconformists, those who are in the anarchist or constitutional, lake, let's just say, where I dip my toes in there quite a bit, actually, they are very much appreciated. They are not conforming with whatever is unconstitutional. But then you have the libertarians that are quote unquote conformists from their point of view, but we're also working within the framework of legislation to actually get things reversed to return back to constitutionality, which is much closer to what the anarchists want. So actually anarchy, or I hate to say anarchy, volunteerist, constitutionalist. I mean, I'm not sure how to say it.
Well, there's the root term of the word, which is anarchom, or no rulers.
No rulers. Yep.
Which is effectively what the Constitution actually is. Now, myself, I prefer no government at all, but the way things are, it's like, what was his face? Thomas Paine, but a necessary evil in its best state. Yeah, and its best state, a necessary evil, and its worst, an intolerable one.
Yep.
Um,
So, at any rate, that's our main message here. And what was really special back in 2020 when I was really pushing SAPA on the YouTube channel is how many volunteerists actually started calling government officials. That made a difference. And if for any of them who may be watching this video, either on a recording or live, thank you. Because actually, you guys helped make the difference, the SAPA thing. We got ATF people resigning in the state of Missouri now. That's not happening in Montana where they passed SAPA. That's not happening in Arizona where they passed SAPA. That's not happening in Oklahoma where they passed SAPA because it has no teeth in those states. They're having to resign here in Missouri, otherwise face $50,000 fines. So, basically, we got something positive done. Actually, as you say, we should be on the media with this. ATF people have to resign in the state of Missouri. That's kind of big news.
That's huge news.
Go ahead.
No, that's huge news.
Yeah. And yet no coverage, right? So basically, with going to gold and silver, I know that Jesse said, it sounds impossible, but Jesse may be surprised to know Texas actually got it done this year. Not only did they return gold and silver to its rightful place as money in the state of Texas, they also got a repository for the state.
Oh, it wasn't this year. That was a couple of years ago.
Was it a couple of years ago? Oh, yeah. It was Tennessee. Tennessee that got it done this year.
Tennessee got it this year.
I get mixed up. But Texas got it done. Tennessee got it done. And I believe Utah may be the third state that got it done.
No, Utah did it just before Texas.
Okay. And so, no, Utah was the third state I was thinking of that's returned gold and silver money.
Yeah, I got what you mean.
So we could do it here in Missouri. And in fact, we should be ashamed of ourselves for being the fourth state to do it, right? That is if we get it done. We should have been first. We should have been first in the state of Missouri because we're leading the way as far as liberty is concerned, as far as freedom's concerned. But it's doable, Jesse. It's something that I think that we can do, but we need everyone's help to get it done. And so what you might ask now, and by the way, I'll quit talking here in a second. You might ask now, why is that important for the state of Missouri? Why turn gold and silver back into transactable currency in the state of Missouri? Well, how does that benefit us? Well, we're losing value in the dollar.
Why is it?
And what's going up in value is gold and silver. That is basically how you protect yourself from inflation, precious metals, assets. Let's call it loyal title. We can go into property rights. But the fact of the matter is, if we have a fallback position when the Fed decides to start hyperinflating the dollar, then we'll be in a much better position in the state of Missouri. Much better position when they overinflate the dollar. We'll be better protected here. Our savings as a people, because of, if we have a repository here, we can have the state of Missouri trade out some of those bonds that it's holding as savings and trade them out for gold and silver. So the state will begin protecting itself from hyperinflation too, where the bonds aren't worth as much, and they're not worth as much because they're printing too much currency. So this is the benefit of doing it. Plus also, it lets us as Missourians stick our finger in the eye of the Federal Reserve, which is something we all have to be doing on a daily basis.
Let's go.
I am such a layman whenever it comes to this, but you're not actually talking about Missouri printing its own money, obviously.
No.
So, but we're still using like the federal dollar bill. So how does that change for the individual? Kind of
changes for the individual because if businesses decide that they will take gold and silver as currency, you don't have to use the dollar anymore.
Oh, okay. So it's almost it's interchangeable.
Correct.
But between
you can have two currencies running side by side. This is common in Europe, in Jamaica, Mexico, to have two currencies running side by side. And if you go to Jamaica, you'll see an American dollar price and a Jamaican dollar price of a product on a store shelf. They could do the same thing here. It's this much silver or it's this many dollars, for this box of cereal, whatever. Okay. So we could do the same thing here. But also keep in mind, we are used to, as a people here in the United States, literally an inflationary currency, right? Something that's always going down in value, right? The dollar. Think of it for a second, like people who got Bitcoin, who got into Bitcoin nice and early. Think if you had a deflationary currency, something that just keeps going up in value. What that does is that encourages savings, something we don't do in the United States anymore. Why save money when your currency keeps going down in value through inflation? We need to start doing the right things again. The Federal Reserve is not helping. The federal government's not helping. In fact, they are the problem.
Yep.
We can solve the problem in the state of Missouri by making gold and silver legal tender once again, and also telling the state, you need to start saving, not in bonds, but in gold and silver. And that's the purpose for the repository. That would be the teeth in the gold and silver bill.
If I remember correctly, bonds are literally like the main source from the Federal Reserve of why inflation even happens to begin with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So eliminating that would be like phenomenal. That whole bond exchange between the federal government or the federal government and the Federal Reserve, which are two completely separate things.
And why the states got away from that in the first place, and how we put ourselves in a position as you think that 50 states, they're all different, but really we're all under one umbrella. And we've been under one umbrella probably, what, Pat, would you say, since they took the gold
standard.
the gold standard.
Yeah, the gold standard away.
So, I mean, we're finally getting back to that, and I think that's a beautiful thing. You talk about Missouri potentially being the fourth state to do this. It seems like a quiet movement going on, and maybe it seems like the mainstream media and the federal government are pushing a lot of these hardcore things upon us, or at least, putting it in front of us, fear and all that stuff, because they see this movement happening again. And two things. One, it's not happening in a violent way. And the second one is we're doing it in a very legal way, in the way that it should be done. There doesn't need to be a civil war or a revolution. Look at what you guys are doing with just putting people together and looking what can happen with that. That's powerful, man. That's huge. It's beautiful. We don't have to resort to violence. We just got to come together as people and say, we're fed the fuck up with what's going on in the United States. Let's do something about it. Pat hangs out with a few of his friends. He's got a Discord. You guys got a Discord. You create this beautiful group, and look what you guys are doing, man. This is amazing. This is groundbreaking. Like, continue to do this. So is your guys' next focus probably what we've been talking about with the gold and silver? That's like what you guys' main next focus is after SAPA?
That would be one. That'll be probably our main focus. But also, too, there's some really good bills that'll be going through the Missouri legislature that we need to give special attention to in 2022. The first of which is literally to get rid of all gun-free zones in the state of Missouri. That will be a high priority for us. Also, the ability to conceal and carry a weapon on public transportation, everything from your public buses down to your Ubers.
Oh, is that a thing you can't do right now?
That is correct. Technically, right now, well, at least on public transportation, that is true. You can't conceal carry in the state of Missouri.
I did not know that.
I didn't either.
Like, like public buses and like.
Yep. So if you're bringing your shotgun on the bus, Johnny, wear a long coat. That won't be suspicious at all.
I mean, the whole thing with conceal and carry is it's concealed. So I mean, like, how do you know? Like.
Well, I open carry most places, so
I'd rather be alive and going through some legal trouble than dead.
Yeah. Rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6.
Yeah, exactly.
So, with the organization in the big grassroots movement, we're basically doing something very similar to what we're doing for legislatively. Is very similar to what's happening with the Free State Project in New Hampshire. We're simply taking over the legislature. We're basically for the Constitution, literally acknowledging the Constitution once again, acknowledging the Missouri Constitution, and getting rid of oath breakers, making sure that they cannot be a viable candidate for office anymore. And equally, if they hold positions of power, like for instance, look at Schatz. In the Missouri Senate, he will, if we can have our way, he will not be the president of the Senate for 2022. He has proven he's an oath breaker. Same thing is true with Rowden, and same thing is true with Huff. So we do have problems in the Missouri legislature. This is why this organization is needed. We need to go after these folks, show everyone why they're unconstitutional, how they break their oaths. We need to go after sheriffs who do this. It's time for Missouri to clean up its own backyard in every way. Let's not complain about the federal government anymore, because we already have problems here. And what they're doing over there rarely affects us. And their gun laws don't affect us anymore. With any luck here in 2022, their beer flu laws won't affect us anymore. We came really close to getting that done in fiscal 2021. Really close. We missed it. We missed the mark, gang.
Another thing, though, is a lot of their stuff that isn't going to affect us because what's that called? There was one bill that got slipped through, and it bans mandating the jab on anything that is public transit, any political subdivision, which is that includes school districts, or anything that accepts public funds in the state of Missouri cannot mandate it.
So that slipped through?
You said mandate the jab. What'd you say? Mandate what? Sorry.
Mandate the jab.
The VWS.
Yeah, we have to use code words.
Oh, I got you. I got you.
Yeah, you too.
Sorry about that, gang.
Yeah.
So we already know YouTube is after
I'm an
our
idiot.
brand
I
new
was
channel.
like jab. I was like, what does JAB stand for? I'm like, what in the hell?
You're getting jabbed, man.
Yeah, no, I got it. I got it now.
So, Kaleb, I got a question for you, man. I know a lot of this stuff. I mean, you guys talk about this, and you guys are doing it again. So, I mean, and you talk about these people who are oath breakers in the Missouri Senate or in the legislature or whatever it is. So is it just it's up to us, the people, to kind of keep this movement
Correct.
going, and you guys just reaching out to all the Missourians and trying to continue to make this happen? Because how are we going to hold these people accountable if you have a website that only has a couple thousand people? I know you said 2,000 does a lot, but we're talking millions of dollars. If the feds get wind of this, maybe they create some pushback and you guys get more pushback. How do we deal with those types of things, and how do we truly how are you going to use this to actually hold these people accountable?
Well, there's several things we're doing. First of all, we're creating redundancies. If I should, get hit by a bus, be killed in an airplane crash, or get hit by a bolt of lightning, there are people ready to step up and do what I'm doing. That's first and foremost. So basically, I hate to say it that way, but I'm not suicidal, right? What we're doing is a little different, and it does create a threat to the system. Like, for instance, keep in mind, the whole system is corrupt to the core, and they're sweetheart deals, and they're billion-dollar deals. This is a lot of cash. And basically, when that starts getting exposed, people get a little upset. So, but at any rate, more to the point of your question is basically the people of Missouri literally will be educated. What it actually means to be a free human being, what the Constitution actually is, has nothing to do with them. It has to do with limiting the powers of the federal government, and they have overstepped that for over 100 years. It's time to let them know that your rights that are in the Constitution are not given to you by the Constitution. They're affirmations of natural rights from God, and the Founding Fathers said so. So whenever they create a new law that takes away natural rights that you get just for being a human being, you ignore them. Or in our terms, we go against them legislatively. We work within the matrix framework, because reality is actually the federal government is like 99% unconstitutional. That's the reality of it.
More than that.
Inside the matrix, there's a tiny smidgen of unconstitutionality. We can tweak that. So we're working within the legislative framework, inside the matrix, because people are not educated. If we can get these laws done, people say, oh, cool, there's a law saying that the federal firearm laws no longer apply in Missouri, as opposed to them just knowing they were unconstitutional to begin with. You shouldn't be following them, which most people won't do because they're afraid of being put in prison.
I was going to say, if anything, this seems kind of like it's a long burn. Like, it's going to take a while. It's not just like you flip a switch and everything's okay tomorrow, but it's a step in the right direction. Not to use Neil Armstrong or Buzz Aldrin or whoever's thing here, but like, small step for man, giant leap for mankind or Missouri kind. Like, we're not going to notice it tomorrow. It's a small thing for us. It doesn't change anything for us as individuals right this moment. But overall, it's a great step, a huge step in the right direction. And you're talking about educating people. It's a slow education as well. It just kind of happens naturally with laws changing and being updated, or old laws being taken out and whatnot, and us moving forward as a state for the people and for the Constitution. It just kind of is going to happen bit by bit, gradually.
Here's another thing too. It can move faster than what you might think. Can you hear me on your end?
Yeah. We hear you
fine. I just want to make sure. It can move a lot faster than you might think. Between the legislative and literally just organized outright disobedience. You got to understand there's a few layers to this. First off, if you want to understand the Constitution, you need its original definitions of the words that are in it. In other words, you need to read a 1780s, 1790s dictionary, not the modern Webster's dictionary. And if you're going to do that, for example, regulate. People seem to think regulate among interstate commerce or well-regulated militia means more restrictions and more. Regulate then meant to make efficient, not to constrict, not to control, but to make efficient. I'm just using a couple of examples for the Constitution itself. Like you have post roads. The federal government and the courts will try to make the argument, oh, well, that means all postal roads. No, that is not the case. Post roads were literally the roads that had posts on them through the states that you could tie your horse to at night and nap. That is literally what post roads are. So if you put in perspective of the mass noncompliance, that's another layer too. You have to understand their enforcement capability. If 1% of this country flat out said, we're not going to comply anymore with anything you're saying, they would be powerless, because that's roughly about 3.5 million people. Think about that for a second. Now, when you have a state that cuts its enforcement arm to try to enforce that, then what do you have? There's another layer in that as well. Like, let me use Colorado. I forget who it was mentioned earlier about how Colorado, when they had their marijuana thing legalization go through, the feds tried once or twice to raid a dispensary. They blew their budget in doing so because they had to do all the work. Without local capabilities, they can't do shit. I mean, it's just not possible. No, particularly when you have multiple states doing it.
You can only have ATF come in here and raid so many gun shows or whatever so many times before they're like, all right, we literally can't afford to do this anymore.
That's correct. That's the point.
And if the sheriffs are actually standing down and doing what they're supposed to be and doing and being like, we're not doing federal law, like we're doing what we're supposed to do. We're county sheriffs, and you know what I mean? Like we're state sheriffs, county sheriffs, whatever you want to call it. We work for the state. Then we're not helping you with this, and none of our budget goes towards it. Then
well, I see where Johnny.
Not a shot fired. And not a shot fired, Johnny.
Right.
Yeah.
But
this is the point.
I see like where you kind of come from, where it could be a slower movement, and I'm hoping what Kaleb says is true, and that it's not a slower movement, and that it can happen extremely quickly. How quick, I'm not, I don't know how quick I want it to happen, but just quicker, in my lifetime type of thing, or even in a couple years. But I mean, what are you guys going to do about the social media aspect? Because a lot of things are not in your favor for these types of things that we talk about. I know I kind of briefly mentioned it earlier that none of the mainstream is covering this, but when you guys are trying to push, or what does it mean when you're in the legislature? Like, you guys are going to be involved in these meetings, or going to the state capitol, and you're a part of what's going on, that type of thing.
Exactly.
So you don't really have to.
You put a good point on that. That's correct.
And you don't have
We're going to be deeply involved.
You don't have to rely on social media to kind of spread your message in Missouri, because again, how am I going to find out if I never knew you, Pat, and we never talked at all? This is my own fault, but I never would have known that SAPA was ever even a thing, or that it even passed, because again, if I did not know you, I wouldn't have known how to look for it, or there wasn't any news. Well, I'm sure it was passed like in the Kansas City Star, but
that's the good thing about it being a state thing, and it gets even better when you get smaller. I've talked about the whole smaller government before with you, Paul.
Yeah.
And I used the house as an example.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you've got 3 people living in a house, blah, blah. Oh, you've got 1,000 people living in a house. Oh, you've got 10,000 people living in a house. The smaller it gets, censorship and social media censorship becomes harder as well. It is easier for people in just Missouri or just Springfield or whatever town in Missouri to unite and do something without social media censorship. It's different because you're not getting your stuff from California. You're not getting your stuff from, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Another thing about social media as well is a lot of what they try to do, if they censor you, they'll start out with like shadow banning and whatnot. Well, one of the most effective ways to combat shadow banning is just to the people you have on hand, that can print something off on their printer, can print out some information and then a QR code on it and post it up everywhere they can find publicly. Physical postings.
Yeah, basically just avoiding social media in general, which is how it should be, honestly. And that's, once again, that's easier on a smaller scale. Because people are, if you go post stuff up in the town we live in, people are going to see it. There ain't no, Facebook's not, Mark Zuckerberg ain't out there taking down flyers.
Need an ultralight aircraft, you can drop leaflets.
Yes. Let's make it rain.
But that's a good point. And by the way, we're utilizing social media heavily. If people go to our YouTube channel, which is the Missouri Liberty Alliance, basically it's the description section, we have a whole bunch of social media. We're just mindful. We're careful what we say on YouTube, Facebook, and but we are literally building up towards live streaming on Odyssey, where there is no more censorship. It's gone, where we can have a free, open discussion about the beer flu. Isn't that, look at that. Look, we're self-censoring now because we want to stay on YouTube. We're very careful what we say about the serum, about the beer flu, about lockdowns. We're so careful about what we say.
You messed up.
They're
you
training
said lockdown.
us. What's that?
Nothing.
Okay, yeah, don't say it. So social media is a powerful tool. And unfortunately, censorship is also a powerful tool. So we're using the platforms that have the most people to draw them into platforms that has fewer people, but has more freedom.
100%, man.
Which is good.
So, I mean, and I don't think you really went into it. So what does it mean when you guys get into the legislature? Like, how does that work? You're just being a part of it.
Yep, you form relationships with politicians. And I know when I say that, I feel like I have to take a shower, you know. But what I mean by that is basically you start talking to these guys and you find out who are the ones that you can talk to about the things that you want to accomplish.
And they really want to listen to you?
Absolutely. There's a difference here. This is different than federal. And by the way, I've worked on both sides. I've worked the federal side and I've worked the state side. Federal government, and I've not said it enough times, they really don't care about you, Paul.
I would have never thought that. I would have never began to think that the federal government didn't care about me.
The weird part is state representation, they live among us. They're in our neighborhoods. They're not in high towers, you know, protected by, you know, 10 foot tall fences with curly barbed wire. They live among us. They know there's ramifications for pissing people off. They also understand that there's benefits to making them happy. And also, too, they're incredibly responsive to a dozen or more phone calls to their office on any one given issue. This is the key. There's a lot of code in what I just said. That's as far as I'll take it. But yes, being involved, I've had private briefings from my senator before. Private briefings, just for me. That sounds, well, gosh darn it. You know, you're just Pat Holland. You're just a little old guy getting private meetings from your state senator. Yeah, but I'm not the only one. I know lots of citizens just like me. They get private briefings from their senator or from their representative. These guys are responsive. They listen. So we do have a few problems with people in our Senate, and we'll deal with that. But basically, it's about returning everyone to maintaining their oaths and keeping to the Constitution. And when you have enough grassroots backing up an organization that's pushing this, they really don't have an option. Either they get out of the office, or they have to pretty much comply with what the grassroots wants.
What do you think?
That's the way state legislature works.
What do you think that these oath breakers are going to do? You think they're going to like just bend over backwards and allow this to happen? Their supremacy has ruled for such a long time. They're going to do something to combat this, are they not?
Well, look we got SAPA gun with teeth.
True, that's very true.
So I would tell you that it doesn't take as many people as people think to move a state. It's impossible to move the federal government unless you have money. I mean, you just got to cough up a lot of cash, and then you can get something done at the federal government. At the state, it just takes voices.
So when you talk about the federal government not giving funding to our sheriffs or our police stations anymore, what has that kind of created in that landscape for the Sheriff's Association in Missouri?
That hasn't officially happened.
Okay.
They've inferred
But then you said
happen.
that was unconstitutional, so it may not even happen.
Yes.
Okay,
well,
sorry.
it's unconstitutional for federal money to come to local law.
It's unconstitutional for them to have federal money involved in the first place.
Yeah, for them to even tax us to do that in the first place. Everything about law enforcement today is unconstitutional. This is not the way law enforcement was supposed to be.
So how mad are they at you, the Sheriff's Association, in local police stations?
Well, I don't know about the Sheriff's Association personally, but I do happen to know that there's one or two sheriffs that aren't too happy with me right now.
I bet some, man, I'd be willing to bet that there's some who are all about this, though.
Yes, there are. Yes, you're right, Johnny. It's about 50% of our sheriffs, and I can't say how I know that number, but I think about 50% of our sheriffs in Missouri were very happy to see SAPA. And it's because they were intelligent enough to know change was coming. Did you want Biden's change or did you want SAPA change? Those were your two options. And there's about 50% of the sheriffs said, shoot, I don't care about federal money anymore. I don't want Biden's change. Let's have Missouri take care of, firearms laws from this point forward.
Another thing we need to attack here in Missouri is asset forfeiture.
Yes.
That's a big thing. So the federal profitable sharing program, do you guys know much about that? Okay, so how the federal profitable sharing program works is, so asset forfeiture in general means that they suspect you of a crime. They can confiscate whatever property up to and including your fucking house and everything else. But with federal, how it works with the profitable sharing program is they try the property as if it is the criminal with no defense, as if, and whether you get off of it or not, they still can keep your shit. And what happens is with the profitable sharing program that the federal government has, it's split 75-25. So 75 to the departments, 25 to the federal government. And effectively what that does is it pumps up the police departments with federal money to do their bidding. And on top of that, they can reduce that rate to get a bunch of military equipment from the federal government.
How often does this happen?
That goes into a little bit of what, like, the stuff that Gary Webb was writing about, and with that, and the forfeiture of assets and everything for criminals that haven't been tried yet and everything.
Oh, this happens everywhere all the time. This is common.
And he he committed suicide by shooting himself twice in the head.
Yeah. See, there's a lot of that going around. Guys, I'm not suicidal. Neither is Kaleb, by the way.
Yeah, no. Oh, I'm also armed, so I'll shoot back first. You come at me, I have done nothing wrong. You aren't going to wind up living very long.
Yeah, but the main point of this whole thing is, guys, it's in the Talk Junkies, you're in Kansas City. And Kaleb is in Kansas City.
I'm in Pleasant Hill. Do you know where Pleasant Hill is?
Oh, man, you're real close to us,
yeah,
man. We're in Belton.
We could go out for lunch tomorrow, man.
Yeah, man. Like 30 minutes away, man.
I have to get my car fixed. My fucking timing belt's broken in my car. I got to fuck with that.
We need to go, man. I need to get some ammo. We need to go shooting sometime. Yeah.
I got a fucking range in my front yard.
Oh, even better.
Front yard, not even backyard.
Your front yard, not
front
your backyard.
Yep.
I spray and pray the targets in the front yard. I mean, it's all good.
So, but the point is, guys, this is our main message. If we have any message, clean up your own backyard. Clean it up. Don't complain about the federal government anymore, because there's nothing you could do anyway. And the more you complain about the federal government, the more likely you are to, oh, shucks, that's just how the federal government works. Oh, well, our rights go away. Yeah, that's just a natural progression of things. No, it is the natural progression of politics for a government to actually lean towards totalitarianism over a period of time and eventually get there very quickly. It'll take, literally 10% of your rights and then quickly take 90%. This is why the beer flu and the serum are so dangerous right now. Missouri is preparing for this. We are getting our rights back. We are telling the federal government, get off our land. This is what we need to do. As Missourians, as hillbillies and Missourians, we have to tell the federal government, get off our land, leave us alone. We can take care of ourselves. We don't need you.
I love it.
It's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
That actually brings me back to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say another thing to think about. If you want to put the scope of the federal government into perspective when it comes to what you do with your own property and your own life, they try to control everything. But when they banned alcohol when they had alcohol prohibition, what did they do? They amended the Constitution, which means they recognized they had no authority to touch something that wasn't protected by the Constitution. The Second Amendment is a redundancy because they knew they would try eventually, somehow. They have no authority to tell you what you do in your own life, your own property, and what the hell you own, buy, sell, or exchange. They have no authority over it.
We've been saying that for a while.
Yeah. Literally, man. You're hitting home. I appreciate it. You just summarized it, man. You just summarized it, basically. That's
if they can't regulate alcohol without amending the Constitution, they can't tell you what you can own, particularly when it's redundantly protected.
Yep.
Man. Hey, I got another idea you guys might like, something that we're toying with here at the Missouri Liberty Alliance. How about we redistrict our Senate like the U.S. government does? The House of Representatives here in the state of Missouri are actually representative of the populations, but so is the Senate in Missouri. In the federal government, the House of Representatives is representative of the population. The Senate is representative of borders, land. Why can't we do that here in Missouri? If we do, what we can do is we can prevent a supermajority of liberal-minded senators, from Kansas City and St. Louis and, wherever, from actually having a lot of say.
That's beautiful. So you have one northern Kansas City or northern Missouri, one from southern, or you go by county or however that works. I think that's
maybe add 3 counties together, and that's one senator.
Yeah,
something like that. How about we do something like that so we can emulate the way the federal government does it and the way the original Missouri government was. Let's go back to the Senate not representing population but representing borders. And so that actually can prevent cities from running, like California is run by 2 or 3 major cities.
Yeah, they run the whole state.
Los Angeles, San Diego, and San Francisco, right?
They run the entire state.
And part of the population vote for the presidency.
We can prevent that from happening in Missouri as Kansas City grows. St. Louis is shrinking, so that's really not an issue. But Kansas City is growing. That's something else that we could take a look at.
It's very true, and it's something that a lot of people probably don't think about or why it's even that way in the first place. But hey, let's look at it. We got this organization. We're a part of what's going on, and with what's going on with laws and provisions that are happening in Missouri, and let's change it. Let's do something for the better of the people, man.
That's correct. Let's put the people first. Thank you,
Paul. That brings me right into what I was going to briefly touch on a long time ago in this podcast, like towards the beginning. But if you're a viewer out there, if you're watching or listening, and I've said this before on other podcasts, and you don't agree with us, you're anti-gun or whatever, you're allowed to believe in your own things. This is still a good thing. Even if you're not for gun rights and whatnot, this is still a good thing in the sense of you're giving your state the freedom to control itself and taking away control from the federal government. Even if you may not agree with this one little thing we're doing that has to deal with gun rights, there's so many other things. Like, this is a step in the right direction just in general for generalized, just freedom.
100%.
The individual has more control. Like you now have more say.
Yes, you have now. Exactly. You have more say. That's the best way to put it.
You're waking up and voting in 2 years for who's Senate or who's going to be involved in Missouri politics. You're actually going to pay attention and you're going to vote and be a part of it. And just like you said, Pat, boom, dude. It's getting me hyped, dude. I'm hyped. I got the chills on the phone with you today when you were telling me a little bit about it.
Yeah. Like I said, it doesn't. People think, oh, geez, you have to get the whole state. All 7 million people on board with you before you can move the state. I'm here to tell you that ain't true. It takes fewer people than most people think, because most people don't call their senator.
I was going to say about 6.99 million of them.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It takes a very small amount of people to move mountains in a state. I'm not talking federal government. It's very important that we define in the federal government, not even with everyone in the United States wanting something, does it happen? Like, for instance, I hate to throw out examples, but the United States did not want Obamacare. We didn't. It was the vast majority of the United States did not want Obamacare. They gave it to us anyway. The numbers don't matter there. This is what matters in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. How much money was his website?
Yeah. It was $1 billion to do a website for Obamacare.
What?
And that was Michelle Obama's friend from college that got the contract.
That didn't even work?
Yeah.
I never heard that.
I never knew
never
about
heard that.
Yeah.
I thought it was $2 billion.
It was
I think it went
high.
up to $2 billion. The original website was $1 billion.
I bet that site worked really, really, really poorly.
It did.
Yeah, it actually didn't work at all, the first one.
Yeah.
It crashed almost immediately.
Yeah. So at any rate, so I guess, with Kaleb here and with I here, I mean, we're two people they're starting up an organization that's actually going to change the face of Missouri. It's going to return us to 100% constitutionality. We're going to clean up our own backyard. We're going to get rid of corruption. We're going to do all that in the state of Missouri. We really hope if you're watching this from another state at some point in time, it doesn't matter what state, you guys could do the same thing. Freedom doesn't belong just to Missourians. It belongs to Montanians or Montanites, whatever you guys call yourself. It belongs to people in California. It belongs to people. Yeah, Californians. It belongs to everybody, but you got to step up. You have to step up. The freedom, by the way, the natural default of government is to take away your rights, to take away your freedoms. You just have to stand up. You just have to stand up. And don't be afraid to be the first one to stand up. I'm still alive, gang, and we got SAPA through. I'm not the only one. Ron Calzone, Aaron Dorr, Eric Burleson, Jared Taylor. There's a lot of fine folks that pushed SAPA through and got it done, Kaleb included. But at the same time, there had to be people to stand up, and there weren't a whole lot of public faces standing up for SAPA. Let me just say it that way. But there were a lot of people willing to follow the people that stood up. So if that's what it takes in your state, do it. Be the one that stands up. Start the movement. In fact, it's not a movement. This needs to be a revolution, a bloodless revolution.
Boom.
You guys, these are our rights. These are our rights. The government can't take them. We get them by being born. Just by being born, you automatically have, this is natural law, God's law, give it a name. And the federal government wants to take away your guns. They want to lock you up in your home because of some beer flu. They want to force you to, take something in your arm that you don't want because, they say you have to. You can't have a job unless you get that job. This doesn't belong in America. We're going to have to take it back state by state until the federal government's powerless because no one will observe their laws. This is how you do it. This is what we call anti-commandeering doctrine. We simply restrict the federal government's ability to use our resources to enforce their unconstitutional laws. That's how you do
it.
Imagine
how much of a better place that'll be when our military budget isn't consuming half of all of our tax money.
Yeah.
It's going to be a beautiful place. And this is a start, Pat, just exactly like you said, man. I watch so much dismal YouTube. I've created my own echo chamber and just with everything going on in today's world. And it's very dismal.
Man, I've seen Talk Junkies recommended videos. When I log on there to upload a thumbnail or whatever, you got some weird shit on there, bro.
I don't watch my shit on Talk Junkies, bro. I watch it on my other account. But anyways, you watch all these massive channels with millions of subscribers, and they don't have solutions like this. You know what I'm saying?
There's very little money,
right,
in creating solutions. Trust me, I'm there. There's no money in it. That's the problem, isn't it?
And it
doesn't make any sense because you would think that it would be the opposite, right?
You would think in a free market, it would be the opposite, by the way. Yeah. We don't have free markets. We're in the matrix, gang. I mean, my brothers and sisters out there that count themselves as constitutionalists, anarchists, I get it. They give me a hard time all the time. I'm doing it wrong. Nonconformity is the way to go. Well, nonconformity, we need that. But we also need people working within the matrix framework.
You need both.
So the perception. Go ahead.
No, I'm just sorry. I didn't mean to cut. I'm just agreeing with you. You need both. You need the nonconformity, but also you need to be realistic. You have to work within what is available to you to the best of your ability, and also have the nonconformity.
But it's easier to get a law passed in Missouri than it is to re-educate everyone in Missouri that those laws that we're following right now are unconstitutional to begin with. Mm-hmm. Trust me. I mean, for me to tell you guys, hey, listen, everyone in Missouri, stop paying your taxes because it's unconstitutional. Will they do it? No. They'll keep paying until, because they're in fear of going to prison, right? But if we pass a law that says you don't have to pay taxes anymore, you got it. So my volunteers friends out there, trust me, I understand where you're coming from, and you're right. All of you are right. All of you guys that are very critical of me, you're right. But I'm working in a different way to take us back into the reality that you so rightly say we have. That's what I'm doing. We just do it in a different way. I'm doing it through legislation. You guys do it through nonconformity. So, but we're all working towards the same goal. So we all work together, and we need the nonconformists, and the nonconformists, hopefully you guys see that you need the libertarians. So we all work together on this. And by the way, left-right paradigm, my goodness, I am so grateful that in 2004, I was able to break out of that. But I will say this, that the progression towards tyranny isn't relegated to Democrats. Republicans are doing it too.
Oh yeah.
So and I'm talking on a federal level. I'm not talking
100%,
Missouri.
100%.
So for those of you who still think, Trump is better than Biden, they're all taking you to totalitarianism. They just do it at different speeds.
Mm-hmm.
They just some of them
I
are
wouldn't
faster.
even say different speeds. I would say just different tactics.
Yep.
Different tactics, different speeds.
I would argue that as bad as Biden is, I would say he stirred up the rebellion in people in the right places. If you catch my drift, people that see, because although Trump was pretty much a tyrant at the same time. He between all the spending and the bump stocks and arbitrary ruling and things like that, Biden's doing exactly the same thing, but the people that were silent and quelled with Trump around are rising up right now. And that's where it's not really giving Biden any credit. It's about giving, the change of having an, more visibly tyrannical individual in the federal government that stirs the rebellion.
Yeah, whoever the scriptwriter is for Biden, you're right. He's doing something.
Yeah, whoever it is that's pulling the little puppet string.
Yeah, because
like it is with all of them.
Since we're live, real quick, guys, I'd like to read off some of the comments, if you don't mind.
Not at all. We're getting close to
Casey Rich 13, who also lives in Kansas City, by the way, and a very good friend to the Missouri Liberty Alliance, and in fact, a real good friend, said, if you could send emails, make phone calls, and go to your state once in a while, you've got more lobbying power than you can imagine. One person has a lot of lobbying power. The thing is no one knows that. They think their voice doesn't matter. At the state level, it actually does. So thank you for that, Casey Rich. Matt Perry has put in there a couple of times that, Kaleb picking at his beard.
Yeah. Well, I do that. It's a habit.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, Freedom Inc. put a lot of stuff in here too, but he's one of the guys very critical of me for what I'm doing. He's in the nonconformist category. So he's put a lot of stuff in basically saying, well, you guys can read it. So I guess that covers pretty much the main stuff in there.
Oh, Matt Perry, that sounds familiar. Is that the guy that was trolling the other day?
I don't know Matt Perry.
Yeah, we've had some guys in here trolling that just make rather argumentative, unproductive personal remarks.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the usual crew.
Could you imagine having that job? Like they don't like you guys that much to where they're just trolling your videos. Like they're wasting their own they're wasting their own time at that point. More power to them.
Google already took us down, Paul.
I know. You told me that on the phone, man. That's crazy.
Yeah.
He was probably one of the guys that turned around and started reporting shit just for fun.
Google and YouTube apparently are not fans of the Missouri Liberty Alliance, which is a shame. I think we're a pretty good organization. I think if they took the time to get to know us and had a beer with us, I think they'd like us.
They're a dying company, man. People are going to eventually realize that they're not going to work anymore. Now, you may not agree with that.
I don't. I 100% disagree.
Yeah.
I may hate them as a company.
For sure. No.
But
people are going to wake up, man. I mean, you got the guy coming out with the Freedom Phone, which I think is amazing. I don't know too much about it. But the Freedom Phone that has nothing to do with Google or Apple or anything like that, it's just a phone that's about freedom. Just small things like that. Again, I think it's a silent movement, and it is happening, man. And it's nonviolent. type of thing, and we can win, man, and we can come out on top and get our individual liberties back.
DuckDuckGo does the same thing for search engines, and it's failing more now. It's losing more money now than it was when it first started.
I'm sure Google lost money at some point, and they probably lose money all the time. But they're still there. DuckDuckGo is still there. It's still applicable.
This is the negative Nancy part of me that's like, I just don't, man, people are so, and myself included, I'm included in this, by the way. We're so comfortable. We're like so comfortable with just like, give me my Amazon, give me my Prime, give me my 2-day shipping, give me my Netflix, give me my YouTube, all this stuff that makes my life convenient and easy. Give it all to me, and I'll give away all my information for free and everything about me for free. We all do, and it sucks. Like, I've gotten off.
Tell me how to vote.
Yeah, like we've done it all, like subconsciously. We don't even realize it, and it's just, like I said, this is just the negative part of me coming out, being like, because I want you to be right. I want me to be wrong, and I want you to be right. That's the truth.
But I think that they're pushing.
Johnny, you're too young to be a cynic. You're just too young.
I've been a cynic my whole life, bro.
They're pushing the envelope.
All
They
right.
truly are.
I got a remark here. I'm going to say both of you are right, and the reason being is because yes, Google will start losing its people. It will start and it will start declining in that way. But the guy over here in the KC hat is right in another regard, that they won't collapse. And the reason being is because they're tied in with Alphabet Inc., which is both China and U.S. company, and they will continue to get subsidies to stay alive for the tracking regime, which they want to.
And CIA money. They got that CIA money, too.
But not from Missouri. They're not getting tax money from Missouri anymore if we stop, we get more involved like you guys are doing.
No, you're right. Bit by bit, I hope we move in the right direction. That's why I said, I want you to be right. I want to be wrong.
Hang on, John. We can't hope. We got to actually make it happen, dude.
Exactly, yeah.
So, just so you know, yeah.
Well, we're a little bit over the hour, Pat. I don't know if you guys have any more that you want to go over, or you're on any time constraints or anything like that.
I think we covered pretty much everything. Basically, I think we could leave it open for a little bit, 10 minutes, for some general discussion. If you guys had some questions on what the Missouri Liberty Alliance is all about, what we're trying to accomplish, now would be a good time. Let's get some exposure to this organization. Let's grow our numbers before we go into the 2022 legislative season.
I will say that it looks like Matt Perry is trying to be an attention whore.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah.
That guy from Friends? Sorry, I had to correct that joke. He was an actor from Friends. Sorry, my bad. That was a horrible joke. That's what I'm known for. Really shitty jokes. My bad.
Did you have something? You looked like you were about to say something.
No, I actually did have a question. So what happens if somebody has a felony and is through the federal government not allowed to own a gun? Does that change in Missouri? To simplify that the best way that I can.
It depends on what technically no. If they're already a felon, the answer is no. Now, the answer is no on that. There's also a lot of things that they can't, now that they can't take your guns for in Missouri that would otherwise be federal law. One of which is, in order for, let's put in perspective, in order for you to get a big enough offense in Missouri, or at least for them to start complying with federal things, you'd literally have to be a drug trafficker. Literally, that's the extent. Outside of that, there's no misdemeanors in Missouri that you could get your guns taken away from you for. There's no, once again, a felony is still a felony. There's some of that stuff that needs to be removed.
On the federal level, right? Felony, not state. Is there a difference?
Well, felony is literally federal.
No.
Felony is
Okay.
federal level.
Right.
But I'm sure the state has things written in also to where
that's something that they kind of have the same language on.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, technically,
also there
under
are
SAPA,
ways to there are processes you can go through. Like there's processes that people can go through that cost money, unfortunately, to where after a certain amount of time that they can't get rid of the felony, but they can own guns again. There are felons in Missouri that own guns legally.
Yes.
Yeah. There is an expungement process you can do. I'm going to have to dig more into exactly how that works.
What about background checks, Caleb?
Once again, that's only something that applies if it's
FFL?
Yeah, FFL.
Okay, so
That's something that hasn't been a thing here for a long time. You don't need a background check for anything.
yep. But if you go through an FFL, they will put you through a background check.
Yes.
Yeah, because they are still federally licensed.
What are the main companies that would use an FFL, like Academy or Dick's
all
Sporting
your gun
Goods?
dealers, yeah.
Everything. I bought from a guy. I bought from a guy here in town who is technically he has his FFL.
So in order to sell guns, you have to have an FFL.
No.
You can sell whatever you want, whenever you want, however, under Missouri law. It's just if you have that federal license to import into the state and sell guns, or just to sell guns, that you complied with the feds already, they got your number. So if you sell something, to put it in perspective, how it actually works. Have you ever met? I mean, you know what a 4473 looks like, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the background check, piece of paper. Well, they have to keep those on hand for 25 years. Not only that, but they also have to have a logbook, and the ATF regularly shows up at these places and checks the logbooks. And what would happen is, although legally in Missouri they can sell you one without background check, if the feds walk in there and they say, there's a gun, I don't see a 4473, where is it? Then they get in deep shit.
But now that's not the case.
It is still for FFLs,
because they already have the federal license. They have complied with the feds, and the feds have come to look into their paperwork.
Paul, it depends how you purchase it. So, like, for example, you could go to a gun show right now and buy from someone who is not an FFL, and you could purchase that firearm. I purchased mine, my most recent one I purchased online from a website. That website ships it to my FFL here in town, who I then go and get it from. So I paid the website, and then I pay my FFL a fee that's like $20 or $30 or whatever, and get it from him. But the whole reason that it had to go through him is because that website legally had to ship it to an FFL.
Right.
That's where if I had just went to a gun show and done private purchase, I can do that.
Right, I got you.
Yeah, you can also manufacture and sell in Missouri without, now I don't want the feds catching on to you, because they can still do some things. But if you do it, if enough people are doing it in large enough numbers, they're powerless. Once again, That's another layer, the non-compliance with the other. The feds can still try to do things, but
well, technically they can still come into the state with their thugs. They technically can, but they just can't get any help from Missouri law enforcement.
Right.
So they're much, much less likely to do so.
They also can't get any help from Missouri judges to issue warrants.
Correct.
That's huge. But then they could take you to a federal prison.
I mean, well, they just have to get a federal warrant, which is just harder to get, but they could still get it.
Yeah, and they have to have enough evidence.
Less likely that they're going to. Yeah, I was going to say less likely they're going to do it for an individual like yourself.
What I'm saying is, like, if this stuff starts catching wind, the federal government's going to try and make an example of somebody to say, hey, you guys should probably stop doing this.
They did that in Kansas, but it didn't wipe out the law. Effectively, there was one guy that had a suppressor that went over state lines, and they made an example out of him. But he recently actually just got out of jail, and he's not marked with anything. So,
okay.
But there was that case in the one that was in Kansas with their SAPA that was one of the early ones, and it wasn't real well worded. But it's still now people seem to think that their SAPA isn't there anymore. That's not the case. It was only one guy with a suppressor that went over state lines, and the actual documentation on the case specifically states that it only applied to that one situation. So it's still technically in effect over there. Now, they're getting plenty of federal money, and there's no consequences for cops that comply, and then they've got a tyrant for a governor over there. So good luck with actually.
I didn't know that Kansas had a SAPA.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did.
They got one in 2011.
Wow.
But it's half-assed.
Right, no teeth, like you said.
There's
federal
no
law
teeth.
Still enforced.
Yep. So I think the message here, I meant going back to SAPA, and where a lot of people say, gosh darn it, I didn't even know what it was. It's an option. It's called literally anti-commandeering doctrine. It ties into the 10th Amendment, James Madison, and what it says basically is you can literally, the federal government cannot force a state to use its resources, the state's resources, to enforce a federal statute, law, regulation, whatever. And that's what we use to get SAPA done. The very same thing they use to get marijuana legalized in states, because the federal government still says marijuana is illegal.
Yeah, they can still go in there. They can still go in there and do stuff. It's just not worth their time anymore.
Nunn here keeps. I was gonna say Marissa Nunn here keeps saying SFL state fire. No state firearms licenses. Well, all that does. God damn it! This douchebag over here, Mike Perry. Let's see here. State firearms licenses. No, we don't need those here. Because that's not going to change whether or not you can bring firearms into the state. All that's going to do is subject someone as a target. And not only does that hand more power to the state that you don't want them having, but it also, let's see here.
I just put Matt Perry in a timeout here.
yeah, I remember that guy. He was the one that was in here trolling. Oh, when we were still trying to, when was that?
If that's the case, if that's the case, don't give him more time than he deserves. You know what I mean?
No.
Yeah.
Like, don't even worry about it.
Yeah, we're done with talking about him. Go ahead with what you were saying there.
See here. The SFL, though, you don't want to be giving the state that power. Second off, you don't want to have a documentation of different businesses and what they buy and sell in the state, because that just gives a target to the federal government.
Yeah, you're just giving the federal more reason to go after someone.
Yeah, they're saying, oh, well, these places are SFLs and they're not complying with our federal firearms licenses. So no, it needs to be just purely
free market,
non-compliance. Yeah, just people just buy, selling, manufacturing, whatever, and a bunch of people need to start doing it quickly, all at once.
Yes.
So basically, that's it, guys. I mean, what I said, the volunteerists, the anarchists, the constitutionalists, whatever you say, non-compliance. Well, that's essentially what we're doing on a state level with federal gun laws. We're not complying, and we've made it legal to do so using the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which is for us. Remember now, the Constitution's not for us. That's limits on federal government. The first 10 amendments are for us. And so we're using the 10th Amendment, which is for us, to limit federal power as the Constitution says we can do.
Yes, yeah.
States' rights, anti-commandeering doctrine, non-compliance, non-conformity.
I'm glad. Do you guys happen to know how far back anti-commandeering stretches?
I'm sure it's happened throughout the history of the United States, yeah, but it just hasn't really been prevalent.
First time it happened would have been against the Alien and Sedition Acts, and that was by Kentucky and Virginia. You ever heard of Kentucky and Virginia resolutions of 1798?
I haven't.
Okay, so that was, you ought to look into those and read them. They're interesting. It was Thomas Jefferson, and he flat out said the rightful remedy is a nullification of the act. In other words, a nullification by the states. And then again in late 1850s, right? Yeah, late 1850s, 1860. The northern states used the anti-commandeering doctrine to blockade the Fugitive Slave Act by the federal government. Then it was used again also pretty extensively by a couple of states, even blockading the alcohol prohibition. And then there's a couple other instances there, but then it's been used a lot recently between marijuana prohibition, blockading that. When it comes to immigration, yeah, they've gotten rid of that. By the way, a lot of people don't know the difference between immigration and naturalization. Federal government has power over naturalization, not immigration.
That's the states, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a very specific difference between the two terms.
Well, they also did they not use it whenever? I'm pretty sure they tried to enact the Federal Reserve like 3 or 4 times way back in like the 17 and 1800s. Did they use that type of the Commandeer Act for that, or was it just, hey, fuck you,
no,
you're not coming in here, we're just burning the bank down? Burning the bank.
I know they had an original national bank shortly after the turn of the 1800.
I think there was like 3 separate times where they had it and they got burnt down like 3 separate times because people realized what was going on. They're like, no, I'm not okay with this.
No, there were 2 other times that it was tried and it failed. And then there was the Federal Reserve, and then it started to fail, and then they took the gold and started printing money with it. So
all that jazz. Well, Pat, we got a lot of information in there, man. I know we're at like close to an hour 30, man. I don't want to go too long because there's a lot of good information in here, and I just, you know how people can be with how long videos are. So I kind of leave it right there, my man. Is a beautiful podcast. I don't know if you, Johnny, or Jesse have any lasting comments about tonight.
No, I had my last question. No, I'm good.
I'm solid.
Cool, Pat or Caleb. I mean, before I actually end, obviously, do you guys have your website up? Are you working on one? Where can people find you? I know you're on a lot of different platforms.
Yep. It's basically our website is MissouriLibertyAlliance.com. Now, it's not finished. We put it up hurriedly with a template because YouTube and Google took down our YouTube channel. We got it back up, and we finally got our videos undeleted from YouTube. Actually, we didn't do it. They did it. They still haven't explained to us why they did it in the first place, by the way. They did inform us they were doing it, but they wouldn't tell us why. So MissouriLibertyAlliance.com is the website. We're on Discord, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, we're on BitChute, we're on Odyssey, we're on DLive, we're everywhere. So just remember Missouri Liberty Alliance. And basically, as we actually put together the framework of this organization, we should be ready to rock and roll 2022 when the legislative season begins and actually start making a little bit of noise. And you guys will know it when it happens.
Yes, sir.
Is Michelle Obama's college friend designing the website?
No, actually she quoted 1.1 billion, but we got a guy that quoted it for 500 million.
Okay,
so
well,
we obviously went with him.
Yeah. It'll be better. It'll be better.
Yeah. So, but guys, my main message is we're making a difference in Missouri. We've proven that with SAPA. We're going to continue doing that on every measure. We're going to make Missouri the best, freest state of all 50 states of the United States with the most liberties. Right now, we're number 5. We are number 5 in the United States. SAPA did a lot to help us. There is absolutely no reason why we can't be number 1.
Who is number 1?
Relatively quickly. What's that?
Who is number 1? As far as freedoms
number 1
go,
might be Florida or New Hampshire.
All right.
Isn't New Hampshire's state motto "Give
Fuck
me
you.
freedom or give me death"? There's something along those lines.
Isn't it like live free or die?
Yeah, no, that's what it is. Live free or die. That's New Hampshire, right?
Yeah, live free or die.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
That's a perfect way to end it, man.
Guys, thank you for having us on. There? Guys, thank you so much for having us back. We love you guys. One of these days, Caleb and I would probably love to come by your studio and do a video with you guys in person, if you don't mind.
Not at all, man. That would be great.
I was gonna say that's up to Pablo, but I'm down.
I'm on board, man. You just give me a week in advance so I can get. I would have to buy one more mic, but I would make it happen.
Also, Paul got like half a chub right there because you said studio.
Yeah.
So not basement.
That would be a first. Because we never had a guest in like a true guest in downstairs.
We haven't brought a guest over here other than like close friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Then your very first guest needs to be the Missouri Liberty Alliance.
Yes, it does. 100%. Yep. Man. That would be insane.
Man, and give him. I don't know. I need to get one of y'all's numbers, and you're so close by, man.
I wasn't joking about the going shooting, man. That was a legitimate. Like I'm dead
Neither
serious.
was Caleb. Trust me.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. I got some tannerite, man. I got binary explosives.
Well,
yeah, we're not just shooting. We're gonna blow stuff up. I almost said the S word. Wow, that was close, guys. That was a close call.
Yeah. We'll get it.
I'm a bad influence on you, man.
You are. Guys, thanks again for having us on. Thank you for supporting our work through SAPA. Thank you for recognizing the work that we were doing during the process. The Talk Junkies, you guys are awesome. We love you.
We love you guys too, man. Appreciate you and your community, and look forward to chatting with you here shortly.
You bet. You take care, gang, and thanks again for having us. I look forward to the next visit.
All righty.
Y'all have a good night.
Thank you, guys.
You too. God bless you.
Cheers.
Okay, we are off the air.
We'll get 1 second though, but there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Pat from Truth, Money, Freedom. The Missouri Liberty Alliance with Caleb as well. Thank you guys so much for coming on Talk Junkies. What a great show. A lot of important information to go out there to a lot of Missourians. So hopefully this message gets reached to as many people as possible. I don't know if you guys have any lasting thoughts.
What do we got? Let them know what we got coming up next week, or is it a couple weeks from now?
A couple weeks from now, we have. I haven't confirmed it yet, but I mean, he did say he would. It just would be a couple weeks. He was in the process of. I don't know if he's doing a documentary or movie, but his name's Randy Walsh. He's written a book about the Apollo moon landing conspiracies and shit like that. He's an author. He's in the middle of writing a second book. He might actually be joining the show here in 2 to 3 weeks. We got Brian Forster coming on again in another month because he was a little bit busy. He was supposed to come on last week. I actually did get Brian's book over there. One of his books, I actually put it there on top. I didn't know he was an author, so it's pretty cool. He's written quite a few books, but finally got Brian's book up there. He'll be on in a month. And again, still getting a lot of cold emails, so just trying hard and keep going.
All right.
Yeah. Rock on. Well, the best thing you can do for Talk Junkies is hit that like button, hit the subscribe button to all our junkies out there.
Stay fly and ring the bell.